The movie opens in London, England. A Vietnam War veteran named Nguyen Minh Quan goes to pick up his daughter Phan from school. They then drive to a dress shop in Knightsbridge. When Quan tries to park his car, a guy on a motorcycle parks right between the dress shop and the bank nearby. Quan then accidentally hits another car, and the other driver comes out to argue. Suddenly, the bomb on the motorcycle explodes, blowing up the bank and the dress shop. Quan gets thrown to the ground and is injured during the process. Sadly, his daughter Phan and 11 other people die, and 36 people get hurt. Following the terrorist attack, a news station gets a call from a group called the Authentic IRA, saying they are responsible for the bombing. The leader warns that there will be several other bombings in the future. Shocked, the boss of the news station tells his team to find out more about the recent attack and see if other groups are involved. Later, a journalist named Ian Wood goes to the site of the bombing to take pictures. He sees a devastated Quan holding his daughter's lifeless body. In the meantime, 3 Authentic IRA members watch the news from their hideout. One of them suggests they move out of their current location. The police will probably search for every Irish man in the city, and their group could be convicted. However, the leader of the group says that there will be a high chance of getting arrested if they're on the run, so they decide to stay put to avoid getting caught. The scene then shifts to Belfast in Northern Ireland, where the Irish Deputy Minister Liam Hennessy is in bed with his mistress Maggie Dunn. Just then, he gets a call from his wife Mary, who informs him about the bombing. She's upset that he didn't come home the night before. Hennessy then talks to British politician Catherine Davies about the recent terrorist attack. He tells her that he cannot comment on the situation until they catch the real culprit. It turns out that the two share a history of bad blood. Hennessy tells Davies that if she needs his help in identifying the bombers, then she has to give royal pardon to some people, who turn out to be former members of the IRA group. By this time, we realize that Hennessy was a former leader of the real IRA group. Later, he meets with other Irish politicians and ex-IRA friends to discuss finding out who's responsible for the bombing. They also decide to track down all of the explosives. It turns out that the group who call themselves Authentic IRA are not associated with the real IRA, including Hennessy. The group is rather a radical one, who are operating undercover and killing innocent people. Hennessy is concerned that this group who call themselves Authentic IRA is using their name to operate terrorist attacks. In the meantime, Quan is devastated by what happened to his daughter. He goes through her room and tearfully observes her unmade bed. Just then, 2 detectives visit him at his apartment, which is situated above his restaurant. He asks if the detectives will catch the bombers, and they promise they will. The scene shifts to the Counter-Terrorism Command Unit in London, where the staff are going through the CCTV footage of the bombing. Just then, Scotland Yard's Commander Bromley gets a call from the reception, informing him that an Asian man has been frequenting the unit for the past 5 days. When Quan finally gets to meet Bromley, he tries to bribe him with all the money he has for the bombers' names. Bromley refuses and says that they lack the necessary information for now. During the meeting, it's revealed that Quan lost 2 other daughters to Thai pirates who attacked their ship en route to a refugee camp in Singapore. Additionally, he lost his wife when she was delivering their youngest daughter, Phan. Later, Lam, a friend of his, visits him and tries to lift his spirit. She cleans the apartment and encourages him to let go of the past. However, despite her pleas, Quan decides to avenge his daughter's death. He even hands over the restaurant business that he had been operating with the help of his daughter to Lam. The next scene shows Quan traveling to Belfast to meet Hennessy. Hennessy's secretary initially turns him away, but after security finds a Swiss Army knife on him, they decide to listen to his pleas. Quan is then led to Hennessy's office room, where he brings up Hennessy's past as an IRA leader. He even shows a newspaper article where the former IRA leader expressed pride in his IRA connections. Despite Quan's pleas to find the bombers, Hennessy denies any knowledge of them or their identities. After leaving the office room, Quan heads to a nearby bathroom where he creates a makeshift bomb using matches, cigarettes, and soda bottles. The explosion rattles everyone on the building floor, but luckily no one is injured. He then calls Hennessy and demands the bombers' names again. Hennessy continues to maintain he doesn't know who they are. Following the encounter, the former IRA leader contacts his nephew, Sean Morrison, in New York and asks him to come to London to assist in identifying the bombers. It turns out that the nephew is a ranger who is an expert at finding people. Later, 4 of Hennessy's IRA associates break into Quan's rented apartment and assault him. Quan, an expert combatant, successfully manages to fight them off and flee. After the incident, Hennessy reprimands his goons for their inability to fend off an elderly Asian man. From then on, Quan keeps an eye on Hennessy, capturing photos of him kissing his mistress, Maggie, in a restaurant. He sends one of the pictures to Hennessy's phone, warning him that his life may be in jeopardy if the photo gets out. Understanding the gravity of the situation, Hennessy hastily returns home and tells his wife to pack their belongings, as they will be moving to their country home for a few days. When they arrive there, we realize that Quan is already setting up explosives and a place for himself to monitor Hennessy's every move. That night, he detonates an explosion at a stable near the country home. Shortly after, Hennessy's wife Mary becomes aware of her husband's extramarital affair. She decides to head to London to stay at her daughter's place for some days. When she's alone, Morrison, Hennessy's nephew, pays a visit to Mary. It's evident that Mary is trying to seduce him. Morrison finally gives in, and they end up having sex. However, the couple is interrupted by a call from Bromley, the Scottish detective. It turns out that Morrison and Bromley are former colleagues from the British Army. The detective proposes a deal involving Hennessy and the search for the bombers, and asks Morrison to meet with him later that afternoon. During their time together, Mary confides in Morrison about her resentment towards her husband. She reveals that 6 years prior, her brother was killed, and despite knowing the identity of the killers, Hennessy chose not to seek revenge. In the meantime, Quan triggers another explosion outside Hennessy's country house, prompting Hennessy's men to chase him through the woods. Our hero outsmarts them with traps, but one of the men shoots him in the shoulder. As a result, he's forced to retreat and hide behind a tree. Quan later uses a hot knife to cauterize the wound, but the pain causes him to lose consciousness. During this time, he has a flashback to when Thai pirates attacked his family's boat as they were fleeing Vietnam for a refugee camp in Singapore. Quan fought back, but tragically, his young daughters were kidnapped, raped, and murdered, while he and his wife were shot and injured. The scene shifts to Hennessy's mistress Maggie in London. She joins the man who bombed Knightsbridge on his motorcycle. Shockingly, it turns out that she is one of the members of the authentic IRA, and she gets intel about the location of highly political figures through Hennessy. Hennessy is certainly oblivious to her true identity. Together with the motorcycle man, they cause an explosion on a double-decker bus on a bridge, resulting in the deaths of 16 civilians. Following the bus bombing, Hennessy meets with his accomplice, Hugh McGrath. Frustrated, he demands to know who's behind all the bombings. McGrath reveals that Hennessy's initial plan to bomb a few financial targets for political gain lacked impact, so the plan was escalated by a rather radical group who wants real change. In a fit of rage, Hennessy shoots McGrath in the leg to get him to talk more. Left with no choice, McGrath eventually reveals that Hennessy's mistress, Maggie Dean, is also working for this authentic IRA group. Additionally, Hennessy discovers that his wife Mary aided in the bombing as payback for her husband's failure to avenge her brother's murder. Enraged by these revelations, Hennessy shoots McGrath dead. In the meantime, Morrison tracks Quan to a bush shelter in the woods, but our hero surprises him with an ambush. They engage in a fierce fight until Quan gains the upper hand, holding a deadly stick at Morrison's throat. Quan then ties him up, and Morrison eventually provides him with the names of all 5 bombers, including the one responsible for killing Fan, that is, Patrick O'Reilly. He also reveals that O'Reilly has a distinctive burn mark on his hand. It's revealed that O'Reilly is also responsible for a bomb that killed Morrison's own family. That night, Maggie seduces the journalist Ian Wood at a pub, and they eventually end up having sex. It's revealed that Ian is scheduled to be on a flight with VIPs. The following morning, while he's in the bathroom, Maggie swiftly exchanges his laptop batteries with a bomb. After much investigation, Quan discovers the hideout of the bombers and pretends to be a gas technician to get inside. He confronts all 5 of them and engages in a fierce battle. During the chaos, he manages to shoot 2 of the bombers and kills another by smashing a TV on him. Maggie, who had come to report about her assignment, gets wounded in the shoulder. Quan then faces O'Reilly and ultimately strangles him to death with a curtain. As Quan leaves the scene, police storm the room and question Maggie about the whereabouts of the 3rd bomb. Maggie, defiant, mocks the police, but they resort to torturing her with electrical jabs to extract information. After realizing that Ian is unknowingly carrying a bomb in his laptop, the police locate him at the airport. They quickly confiscate his laptop and throw it down a jetway, causing it to explode. Thankfully, no civilians are injured during the explosion. The police then get orders to eliminate any loose ends, so they end up killing Maggie. In the meantime, Hennessy is enraged by his wife's betrayal. Just then, Morrison reports to him, saying that Quan let him go. Hennessy then reveals that he's aware of Morrison's and his wife's affair. He instructs his nephew to return to New York, but before that, he has one last task for him: execute Mary as revenge for both her actions and Morrison's own betrayal. Morrison, following orders, visits Mary at her daughter's place and indifferently shoots her dead. Elsewhere, Hennessy gets a call from his politician friend Davies, who was supposed to be on the flight targeted by Maggie. Davies expresses her gratitude to him for potentially saving her life, but then drops a bombshell. Bromley has evidence of Hennessy's affair with Maggie. Davies asserts her control over Hennessy from that moment on, leveraging the compromising information against him. She tells him that he is now under the control of the British government. Shortly after, Quan confronts Hennessy with a photograph capturing his intimate moment with Maggie at the restaurant. He reminds the former IRA leader that the picture could be damning evidence for his involvement in the terrorist attacks. Hennessy expresses regret, claiming he never meant to harm Quan's daughter or any other victims. Driven by a desire for justice, Quan compels Hennessy to upload the picture online so that it can go viral. The scene then cuts to Quan returning to his restaurant, where he's kept under surveillance by an agent following Bromley's instructions. When asked if they should intervene, Bromley decides to let Quan be. Later, Quan is approached by Lamb, who finds him and warmly embraces him with hugs and kisses.